Welcome to the Daily Dharma, a gentle podcast where we read a philosophical story every week and reflect on how it relates to everyday life. Our focus is to use Buddhist philosophy to understand the complexity of modern life and find achievable and accessible pathways to peace. Hi everyone, welcome to the Daily Dharma. In this episode, we'll be talking about the ebbs and flows of life and how we can learn to accept even the most challenging changes. The story that reflects on this theme is called Yes, Life, and it comes from the book Tiger, Mouse, Strawberry by Yuki Senda. Here is how the story goes. A man visited a Zen temple to reflect for a few weeks and let silence enter his life. On the very last day, the man felt much better. He was very calm and felt stronger, but still he felt something was missing. Therefore, before leaving the temple, he went to the Zen master and asked him, "Master, tell me, how do you find peace?" The Zen master replied, "Well, I simply say yes to life and everything it has prepared for me." This is what I have to say is a very simple story, but it is something that I have to remind myself of over and over again. That no matter how much preparation we make in life, how much foresight we think we have, and sometimes even how many people try to warn us, life comes at us faster and, unfortunately, harder at times than we were really prepared for. And for me, this year has been one of those years where I've just, in essentially the entire process of pursuing this great dream of mine of working towards a career in mental health, I've had to endure just the crushing pressure of academics after such a long time. And on top of that, so many peripheral things that were challenging, such as all the issues we faced and have been working on in our new home. And I think the greater context and something that kept me going throughout this year is how everything is a temporary problem. And also everything is relatively fixable. And how fortunate it is that it is something fixable. I think those two things really kept me positive, or rather helped me find the positive again when things just became so overwhelmingly heavy. Because I think when we really allow ourselves to dwell on the things in our lives that are uncertain, that are painful, that are difficult, a lot of those thoughts tend to get heavier and heavier the more we think of them as a weakness or a shortcoming or something that could have been avoided, an unnecessary suffering. We see the bad in our life as things that we could have avoided, that we felt we failed ourselves at. The weight of those mistakes grow heavier and heavier over time. But if we take the view that this is just what life is throwing at us, and that we couldn't have possibly always been prepared, always been ready, always been essentially in wait to have the right reaction, when you realize just how vulnerable we really are to the ebbs and flows of life, I think we can develop some compassion for ourselves and also have some understanding and acceptance that life is almost always something that we cannot predict. And I think being able to learn to accept that in our hearts over time does make things easier. And also just this idea that the suffering that we have today is temporary, but we still have to face it. The suffering is there. And what is the hope is that the suffering leads you to a place where you expand in wisdom, where you expand in compassion, where you become bigger in your heart. And I have to say, this year has been many moments of that, but there have also been moments where my heart felt constricted and I had to remind myself to opening it up again. But I'm very fortunate that I have so many reasons to open my heart again when it becomes smaller. And I think as we go through life, we have to stay close to those people that help keep our hearts open. We need to keep the things close in our life, whether it's the moments, the memories, the activities. For me, one of my favorite things to do is just look at the old trees that I have the privilege of being near. And only recently I realized some of these trees have been here for probably over 100 years. And I wonder how many things they've seen and been around. And I feel so fortunate to be in the presence of such an old living thing, so beautiful and majestic and strong and powerful. And yet one day that tree will be gone too. But simply being there witnessing them, it makes me feel as though whatever that I'm facing is not so overwhelming after all. And it's very mysterious, I have to say. But I think when we go through life and we find those little moments and experiences that soften us, when we experience those hard moments where our heart becomes so hard and constricted, we have to remember the keys that help us open up again. And this year has been a year of re-remembering those keys and discovering in a new place all the new ways in which I can essentially create new experiences for myself to soften whenever life gets really hard. But I have to say, one of my favorite moments recently is my mother enjoys having the fortune told of people in our family, and this is just something she does, even though we don't ask her. And she happened to have the fortune of this year for me. And at first, I thought it was going to be fun, and I read the translation. But the fortune was full of petty troubles. It said I was essentially just not going to have a good year. And even though this is not something I knew that this is not something I should take seriously, it still deflated me. I still felt kind of downtrodden in reading that this random fortune would say these things about me this year. And unfortunately, some of that resonated because it has been a difficult year in a lot of ways. But then my mom and my sister both insisted that it's very silly. There's nothing to be concerned about. And there's so many good things happening in my life. So essentially allowing a fortune to dictate how I feel about my life is just not the right thing to do. And just in watching them, so working so hard to cheer me up and working so hard to essentially disprove or insist that no, like I am having a good life. I am having a good year, that there's so much good that's happened. Just that alone cheered me up. And I felt hopeful that no matter how difficult life gets and no matter how untenable the changes sometimes are, even if we have one person that can help us see the good, whether it's a friend or a stranger or a family member, just one person who sees the good and helps us see it as well, even that alone is a powerful way to weather the challenging moments and experiences of our lives. And I think for those of us who have those people, we're very fortunate. And I felt so fortunate and grateful in that moment. And of course, the fortune doesn't bother me anymore because I know that when difficulty arises, I have people that are there to generously offer their support and perspectives and to let me know I'm not alone. And even if we're alone, I hope we can find those keys, those environmental places, moments, experiences that can make us feel that way too, that we're not alone, that there is an entire universe that is rooting for us, and that we will get through this suffering, which is also temporary and will also end one day as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions, or even if you're having audio issues, anything like that, please feel free to email me anytime, and I'd be happy to help you at dailydharmapodcast@gmail.com. And may you have a beautiful, safe, and joyful week ahead of you. Until next week.